Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's in-depth ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, I'd like to start international today, and I had a good time watching the Olympics over the weekend, so I thought we'd start over in Asia. Now, as you look here, this is at the surface winds this afternoon here on Monday afternoon. A couple of important things to be pointing off. There's a deep low-pressure center, as you can see here, just off the coast of Japan, but I'd rather focus actually on what's coming into the mouth of the Yangtze River here. This is a tropical cyclone, and as you can see, it's bringing in a lot of moisture off the ocean, and its forecast track is to take it right here through parts of both the North China Plain, which is in this area, and the Manchurian Plain, which is a bit farther to the north. And why I'm stressing in on this tropical cyclone and its moisture is because over the next 10 days, if you look here at this precipitation anomaly map, we can track the forward progress of that cyclone pretty clearly. Now, a couple of things to note. When you think about especially corn and soybean production in this area, a lot of it is happening right in through here, okay? And then a lot more here in the what we call the Manchurian Plain. So this is really the main corn and soybean growing areas in China. We're about to bring a very heavy rainfall into this area, some places well more than 4 inches than normal over the next 10 days. So we're going to have to watch that carefully. And just a reminder, looking back over the last 30 days, this corridor right in through here has actually seen some very heavy rain. But notice the southern part of the Manchurian Plain right in here just north of the Korean Peninsula, which is right in through there. There's a lot of grain grown in this area too, and we're starting to see indications of drought developing in that area. Now, since we took a quick look here at what was going on across parts of China, I'd like to next take you to some NDVI imagery I had pulled up here for Europe. Now, remember when we look at these images, the color, the closer you get to this side of the color spectrum, the healthier the crop or the vegetation looks from space, and then over here would look less healthy. And what's great about this website, this is NASA's Worldview tool, is it allows you to do multi-year comparisons. So I'm going to compare 2021 to 2020, and we're right now looking at 2021, July 18, 2021. It's an 8-day rolling average. Now, if I slide this over to show you a year ago, things look quite different across much of Europe and here in parts of the Russian wheat belt. Let me do that again. You're looking at 2020 now. Let's go now look at 2021, and I want to start over in France and Germany. You're going to notice that from space, due to just a lot of rainfall this spring and summer, the Vegetation Health Index looks like this in 2021 and that in 2020. See the difference? A lot, well, healthier from space, but we do know the flooding problems we've been having. But I'd like to zoom in over here on Ukraine. Let's look at Ukraine, Belarus, and a little bit farther to the north in this part of the Russian wheat belt. Now you're looking at 2021, but if I slide this back over, you can see that in 2020, much of northern Ukraine looked better. So again, you're looking at 2020. Here's 2021. See how the colors get darker, more blue in this image versus this one. And we've noticed that this area especially has been quite dry over the last, several weeks. And the question is, how much of an impact has that had? Because there's been a few pretty impressive heat waves that have gone through there as well. The question is how much of an impact that's had on crops. We're starting to see some evidence of that from space here. But we're going to keep a very close eye on northern Ukraine, Belarus, and then getting into this part of Russia as we move forward. So I just want to give you that quick international perspective, and let's come back here to the United States. I want to show you our latest satellite imagery from GOES 16. Once again, it's another day where we have quite a bit of smoke that is in the western part of the United States from the wildfires. It's moved into the Canadian Prairie in the upper Midwest, and it's pulled all the way over here into the east as well. If I just kind of go back and forth today, you can kind of see the flow of the atmosphere. There is actually a weak stalled out frontal boundary here on which we're getting a lot of scattered but very large and healthy storms that are putting down quite a bit of heavy precipitation. Some of them have been warned today as well. And then you can see, I'll just point this out, watch right in through here just off of the border of both Georgia and Florida, just in the ocean. We had a weak tropical system that just made its way onshore this morning. And as it did so, it just produced some locally heavy rains and some gustier winds. But this overall flow pattern is going to be one that we're going to see more or less on a wash, rinse, repeat cycle for a little while, where essentially we're getting a very strong southwestern monsoon curling around like this, producing some very heavy rains in places in the Intermountain West. It's going to blow that smoke up into the northern plains, and it's going to cascade down and turn under a deeper trough that's developing over the Hudson Bay. and daily scattered convection over the southeast to the mid-Atlantic. And we're going to watch for complexes of storms to be moving in this northwest upper level flow. Again, it's those little short waves in the jet stream that excite these storms, and once they get going, they tend to be self-propagating. Now, because of the issues we've had with lightning starting fires, just want to remind you of that tool that I like to use, blitzertongue.org. In fact, I'll just do this again for you real quick. If you just Google Blitzertongue, so blitz or O-R-T-U-N-G, like that, just go ahead and hit Google. It'll take you here. You click on it, and you get this map first. It's really kind of neat because it shows you these live lightning strikes. But what I like to do is come up to real-time maps, go to vector map, and again, you get this international view of lightning. So you see it all over the world, and then kind of zoom and pan your way around to see different places. So you can already see the stronger storms coming up here in the southwestern monsoon today, the big complex of storms in parts of Kansas and Oklahoma this afternoon, and then all the individual storm cells just fed on that Gulf moisture and that weak little boundary that's tucked here between parts of Virginia and North Carolina, all the way back here through the Mid-South. So just a resource I want to keep folks checking out. It's one of my favorites. I just thought I'd bring it up for you live here. From there, let's go take a look at what that smoke is going to do. So this is our latest vertically integrated smoke forecast through the next 48 hours. And those fires, again, in parts of Idaho, Montana, Washington State, getting up into British Columbia. Look at the smoke spreading. And that's not to take anything away from the big fires that are in Northern California as well. So we're continuing to see this smoke move all the way here out into the open Atlantic as well. Now, I'm going to step away from what we've just had, and I'm going to give you some bigger picture things that I'm going to be watching. The first is angular momentum. So this is both the vertical and the zonal integral of angular momentum. And remember, what we watch for in this are when the values either get well above normal, meaning we have some very strong westerly winds, or when they're below normal, meaning we have very weak westerly winds and more north-south flow. And I've noticed that the angular momentum since the beginning of July has really increased. Now, what's important is to know where the increase is located. A lot of it, in fact, I've been talking with a lot of folks in Australia about this, has been right down here. Very strong storm track just south of Australia. We've also seen an increase in westerly momentum. That's right almost in here where the trade winds should be, but it's right there about 15 degrees north. Now, for the jet stream that comes across North America, we've not had, if I'll just circle the whole, or put a square around the whole thing, we've had weak flow for a while. And that's why it's tended to get bunched up. It's tended to get stuck in ridges, and it tends to be highly amplified. What I mean by that is we're developing big ridges and big troughs, and highly amplified flow tends to give you, weather patterns that are of substantial deviation from average. And this is being enhanced by what the MJO is doing. Now, later this summer, I'm going to sit down and put together a great just primer video to explain what the MJO is, because I know I gloss over it pretty quickly here, but I'm just going to tell you what's going on right now. It's currently coming out of Phase 5 into Phase 6, which means it's leaving just north of Australia and Indonesia and heading out into the open Western Pacific. So there it is. And it's relatively high amplitude, pretty far away from the center. But notice how the forecast is to take this over here into phases 8 and 1, which is almost like a reset, comes back over to Africa. Now, why I'm watching this so carefully is for a couple of reasons. While there's no new tropical activity expected now, when this moves back over to Africa, when we start the month of August, that will give us a better chance at getting African easterly waves, which could then produce more tropical cyclones. And we've talked about that lately, so that's still on in this forecast. But the other thing I want you to note is this. You see, when we look at the MJO in Phase 6 under INSO-neutral conditions, which is kind of what we have now, it tends to favor a bigger ridge going up into this part of the Canadian prairie out of the west and deeper troughing in this area. Now keep that in mind. That's when it's in Phase 6. That's where it currently is. But it's forecast to move over to Phase 1. And historically, that is more associated with, as you notice here, a ridge in Alaska and a trough just to its south. That's more of a blocked up high over low pattern, which stagnates things across much of North America. So I'm using this as kind of a precursor to the pattern I think we're going to be seeing, because while it's not a perfect correlation, it is a correlation we have to consider. Now, other kind of bigger news here, let me just refresh this so we can watch it. Throughout May and into June, we've noticed that the ocean temperatures at a depth of about 100 to 200 meters have begun to cool off in this area. Now watch it again. So we're here into June, we're going to start July, and you see the cooler water showing up there? Now, why this is important is that this over here on this side of the diagram is South America, and this, let's try that again, is Australia. So you're looking at the top of the ocean. And what we're seeing here is the replacement of these warmer waters with cooler water. We're now coming back to that idea that throughout September and October, November, we're going to begin to see that cooler water emerge in this area. This is the latest forecast from the NMME, looking at September, October, November timeframe and the re-emergence of what could be another weak, possibly to moderate, La Niña. And I just want to iterate something I've been talking about before. That historically correlates, if you look here, when we think about precipitation from September to November, where you see the warmer colors, that is a correlation with drier conditions. And where you see the cooler colors, that's a correlation with wetter conditions. So you start to notice that the correlation coefficient goes negative here, indicating better chances for rain September, October, November. But we have these kind of regions where it tends to be drier during what we traditionally think of as harvest time period here across this part of the United States. So I just wanted to reiterate that fact as we continue to watch this particular La Niña evolve here. Now, back to some more recent weather. Last 72 hours of precipitation as measured by radar here from the MRMS data set. We've had some pretty large thunderstorm complexes roll through the parts of the upper Midwest and northern plains. In fact, some big hailers that came through here, and then some very strong storms that went through this area, producing some severe reports in Michigan as well. There was a weak line of storms that kind of just built in this direction over the weekend, producing some locally heavy rain. But do you notice as you step back and look at it, from here in this part of the Corn Belt to the southern and central plains down to the southeast, a lot of hit or miss storms. There's a lot of wide area on this that were missed. The southwestern monsoon, though, has been impressive to say the least, and there's been some mudslides and landslides as a result of this. But just thinking back recently, it's been a while since I've seen such heavy precipitation in Arizona, where a year ago we were just stacking up those 100-degree days. This year, the southwestern monsoon's been much stronger. And that flow around it like that is going to be critical to this upcoming forecast. More on that in just a few moments. Our all hazards weather map has a significant portion of the United States in through here that is dealing with excessive heat warnings, watches, also heat advisories, and that's because of the way this ridge is opening up in the midsection of the country. This is all flood watch down then through here as the southwestern monsoon continues, and we have areas of air quality issues surrounding all of this. So thinking about it, let's go take a look at probably the most important series of maps we're going to look at today. It's what our jet stream's doing. The pattern matching we do with the jet stream is actually one of the most essential skills we learn when forecasting the future weather. And what I want to show you is that from Monday into Tuesday and Wednesday, the ridge that's in the central United States is building. Now there's a trough flanking that ridge on this side and on this side. And we're going to watch what happens to each of these troughs because they will tell us what the ridge is going to do in between. You watch it with me, ready? So as we go from Wednesday into Thursday and Friday, this trough gets substantially deeper. This one cuts off. Do you see that? And that's going to help allow the ridge to retrograde back to the west, sending the heat to the west. And then drier and cooler air is going to come in to parts of the Midwest, the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, and the Northeast. I'll show you that in a moment. And then as we work our way through into Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, look at how highly amplified this pattern becomes. And now you start to see that correlation with the pattern I mentioned with La Niña showing up. Deeper troughs here, big ridge anchored right from basically Texas to Montana. And that extends, I guess, up into parts of Alberta as well. And just following the European model out, you notice that as we let the MJO get over into that phase 1, now you start to see the blocking pattern setting up here. It's not exactly where the historical correlations are, but it's blocked. And that's going to be very telling as to what our week 2 pattern is going to be like. And I'm going to share that with you in just a moment. First, let's zoom back out so we can see it. I believe right now when we look at all of the different models, I think that the WPC product, this is a National Weather Service product, which blends both human forecast and the models, is likely going to give us our best kind of prediction as to what to expect. It's a strong southwestern monsoon. We're going to watch this corridor right in through here for enhanced lift along a front. Several rounds of storms that come through this area, including some severe today and here, and I'll talk about that, and just scattered storms. stretching from Louisiana and Arkansas all the way over to Virginia and North Carolina. Where is it dry? Texas. Isolated storms extending into Kansas, and we're drier back in this area as well. Now, we would expect drier conditions here, but some of the storms coming into the northwest, right in this corridor, it's going to look like on radar that the rain's hitting the ground, but what will probably just be hitting the ground is the lightning, and I'm very concerned about that. So, severe weather. First temperature, excuse me. Now, when you look at the next 5 days, you see that the greatest heat appears to be anchoring back in the west, right? Where we could expect in the Columbia Basin, as an example, temperatures maybe 8 to 15 degrees above normal. But it's important to see that this area in through here, where the temperature anomalies are only, 3 to maybe 8 or 9 degrees above normal, that this would be on top of what is the hottest time of year in this area, and that is why we have excessive heat watches and warnings and heat advisories that extend across a broad sector in this area. But just keeping on this broader theme of things, you can now see how that pattern changes. Remember, I showed you the big ridge that goes up like this, and what happens is the cooler air that's here in the Hudson now expands farther to the south, leaves a lingering front in through this area, and that's where we're going to be watching out for our best chances of rain. I'll show you that in just a moment. But this is kind of the bigger picture we're dealing with right now. So some details. I'm going to go to our website here at Nutrien Ag Solutions and show you some of the severe weather metrics we get from the Storm Prediction Center. Now you can see that once we get into tomorrow, we're going to watch this area into the northeast, and again here on the 28th. That's the area we're watching. But let's focus in right now on what we're expecting later today, because the severe storms are highly likely coming out of the Red River Valley of the North through parts of Minnesota into Wisconsin here and then in parts of the UP. We're also watching those storms potentially severe and over here in the Carolinas and Virginia. Now, to get a better eye on those, let's go over to the high-res NAM model and just take a look at how things progress this evening. I've got this parked right around 9 o'clock tonight, but let's just step it back and see those storms today. So what you notice is isolated convection begins here this evening, coming out of the Red River Valley of the North, very isolated into Minnesota. You can see the isolated storms here coming through Virginia, North Carolina, and what you've got over much of the south and southeast. There's our southwestern monsoon. Now take a look. Ready? Into the overnight hours, these thunderstorm complexes begin to organize, which means they begin to have their outflow or their downdrafts grouped together. And therefore, they turn into more of a squall line-like feature that moves through Wisconsin over into Michigan in the overnight hours, likely elevated in the convection. Now, as it continues to move like this, you'll get into the day tomorrow, and there's still more scattered storms that are over parts of the southeast, and those storms move into the northeast. And on the backside of it, there's our southwestern monsoon producing rainfall potentially into Oregon as well. And this is just the pattern we're in as we go into the day on Wednesday as well. Now from here, I want to show you over the next 10 days what we see in terms of the probability of getting at least an inch of rainfall. You see this corridor and this one. You see the constant storms over parts of the southeast. And then you see the southwestern monsoon curling around, potentially providing a corridor in through here, a really good chance at getting quite a bit of precip. But on the flip side of this is the probability of getting less than a half inch of rainfall. Excuse me, let's try that again. There it is. This is the probability of getting less than a half inch of rainfall. And now we see that Texas, the northern plains, Canadian Prairie, and the west, quite dry. Now from this point, let's go out and take a look at the European model just to get some idea on the timing. And it turns out both the European and the GFS have a similar pattern, okay? So we've already looked through Tuesday into Wednesday afternoon. Now by the time we get to Wednesday evening, our next low is taking shape in Ontario, and you can see the weak frontal boundary to its south. And as that pushes through, again, we hit parts of the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes states here with more precipitation. And that then pulls into the northeast as well by Friday. You'll see that the low is sitting here, and there's a weak frontal boundary stretched right in through this area. Here's the southwestern monsoon. There's our scattered convection along the Gulf Coast. But let's see what happens after we go past Friday into the weekend. What you're going to notice is the storms tend to stay on that frontal boundary. See it? And as that occurs, as those storms stay in that position and run over the high pressure center in Texas, that's the area we get the heavier rainfall. Now into this weekend, the ECMWF drops that front pretty far to the south, over the southeast, right into the Cotton Belt down here, at least this side of it. The GFS doesn't quite do that, and it stays there into Monday of next week. Now I'm going to give you the week 2 forecast in just a few seconds, but let me just stitch it all together. This is what the latest European model predicts on total precipitation. Now you see those pieces, right? There's the ones that are running over the ridge. There's the lingering frontal boundary that then dives farther to the south, and there's our southwestern monsoon. Now from here, let's go take a look at precipitation anomalies. There we go. 12Z European run came out today after the markets closed. This is what the next 7 days looks like in terms of total accumulated precipitation compared to average. It becomes much clearer where the drier spots are compared to the wetter spots. And as I told you, the GFS is in lockstep with this, and this is what you got. Now the difference primarily down here in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, that area, because if you go back to the GFS, it's a bit drier down here, only scattered convection. But overall, these two models are doing the same thing with the upper level flow pattern in general, and that's why you get a very similar outlook. Now, this is what's changed from this morning's runs. Going out to day 10, the ridge that is in place here has now broadened a bit. And the trough I was expecting to kind of move out of the Bering Sea here in the North Pacific a bit more toward Alaska didn't do that. So that leaves a trough just off the coast. This trough opens up, and the net effect is much weaker flow in this area. So the end result of that is this morning's runs had a lot more precipitation in this area. And now it's backed off, and we're drier down in Texas to the mid-south and the south-central United States. The European model also backed off on that precipitation, now going over to a drier pattern here in the Appalachian Mountains. And what was much wetter in this corridor, talking about this and through here, has now backed off as well. We're going to watch each model run to see if that continues to be the case. But this precipitation pattern would line up quite well given the flow of the atmosphere doing something a bit like that. Now, we've seen out 2 weeks. Let's flip this over to a discussion on temperatures. It's already past the peak heating of the day for much of the central United States, so we've already realized these temperatures. But take a look at things tomorrow and then getting into Wednesday. As that ridge expands, this will be a very hot day in the central United States, a lot of triple-digit heat here. But look at what the storms are doing in the southwest. Amazing to see that. Now, from here, this is Wednesday's highs. Let's go to Thursday and into Friday and Saturday. That's when the front comes through. Remember the front we were discussing here. And the ridge begins to build back to the west, hence the 101 degrees in Yakima, 99 in Spokane. It's hot in Washington. And that's going to be the way of it, because remember, we go out there to that day 5 through 10 time period. The front comes down, it lingers in this area, the heat builds back into Western Canada, and this is the picture that we get. So we've now gotten these 10-day outlooks, these 2-week outlooks for temperature and precipitation. We're going to finish this up by talking about the effect that this is going to have on moisture, and then we'll look at the new latest European weeklies. So I just want to show you something. It's been really juicy if you get kind of to the east of the 100th meridian here. And some of that really juicy air, watch what happens by the end of this week. This is precipitable water, Sunday into Monday. We're going to clear a lot of that out here as that front comes sliding through. But heavy rain could be on the south side of this into this area, as you saw in the European model. But I just want to let you know, for those of you that are in this area that are getting kind of sick of the heat and humidity, there is some relief that is coming into that area. Okay, from there, this is what the latest European weeklies just released. There is some model discrepancy between the European and the CFSv2. So over the next month, much of North America is warmer than normal, as you see here. But take a look at what the CFSv2 is suggesting in terms of temperatures. Now look at this. This is August 9th through 15th. The CFSv2 is attempting to anchor another very large ridge right in this area. And it is not. This is not resolved at all in the European at this point. Now, I can't really make sense of it given what I see with the MJO and what I also see with the atmospheric momentum. But I want to let you all know I'm going to be watching that carefully for that August 9th through 15th time period to see if this is a consistent pattern. Because after that, it takes the heat and pushes it back out to the west again. Okay, these are temperature anomalies. Now, since we're here, look at what the CFSv2 does in terms of precip. It's drier in week 3 in the Central Plains. And then as you get into week 4, it brings quite a bit of precip into this area, but then drier in the Northern Plains. Now, why I kind of say it that way is because, coming back to the European, we look just over the next 30 days, and the European is just giving out rain to everyone. And it's the same reasons I've been talking about. Yes, we're seeing a shift in the North Pacific. That could bring in more precipitation here. The Southwestern monsoon is cranked up like that. There tends to be some northwest flow, and that Bermuda high at the surface is still over there pumping the moisture in. And the European puts all that moisture over the United States and just delivers it to the ground via rainfall. So I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think we have strong enough signals going into the month of August, past at least the first 8 or 9 days, to really make a conclusive statement about what August weather is going to be. And there's a wild card of tropical activity as well. I'll keep watching this, and I'll give you another report on Thursday, okay? Appreciate your attention today. Thank you.